Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Czar. Unfortunately, those of you who watched my video last week will know that I am confined to the walls of my own home due to COVID-19. And as a result, I wasn't sure if I could make a video. But a lot of people have since requested that I do a garage tour. Instead of a garage tour, I thought it would be more interesting for both you and I if I were to walk you through every exotic car I've ever owned. So without further ado, let's begin by discussing the first exotic car. The 2006 Range Rover Sport Supercharged in an extremely bright orange, which was actually called Vesuvius Red, if I'm not mistaken. But this car might not sound exotic to you guys, but to me, this meant the world. I used to go to Phase 8, which was known as Devil's Point back in the day. And I used to watch Supras, RX7s, everything just run races all around the place. And then we never had anything. I would sit on the roof of a Civic watching these nice cars drive by. And I would always hope that one day I could be able to race, get alongside them. And the Range Rover, although it wasn't fast or anything, back in 2010 when I was 12 years old, that car meant the world to me because I thought it was finally a sports car, something that I could race with. It had a V8, a supercharged V8, a nice soundtrack. It looked cool. Admittedly, today that car would be disregarded as being average or even below average. It doesn't drive well. It doesn't look particularly good anymore. And the interior is kind of garbage. But at the time, that car meant more to me than any other car has meant to me since. It's not that I liked it the most, but it's that it was my first ever sports car, if you know what I mean. So really that car was where it all started and where it was really special to me. After the Range Rover, we got a 2013 Cayenne GTS. This was our first ever brand new car that we had actually spec'd ourselves, both my father and I. And it was in a beautiful agate grey with a brown, I think it was called umber interior. We got this in, I'd say 2013? So we had the Range Rover for 3 years, from 2010 to 2013, and then moved on to the Cayenne GTS. Objectively, a much better car. A 4.4 litre naturally aspirated V8, a better 8-speed gearbox, a better engine, a better looks, better interior. It sounded better, it looked better. Everything about it was better than the Range Rover. But for some reason, to me, the Cayenne was never as special as the Range. Maybe it was the fact that we had only owned it for 1 year, or maybe it was the fact that, I don't know, maybe it wasn't the first sports car. It was a lot faster, a lot louder, a lot nicer to drive. In fact, my dad still talks about how good it was to drive back in the day. Unfortunately for me, that car just never did it. I don't know why that is. But the car immediately preceding the Cayenne GTS is my all-time favorite car that I have ever owned. The 2014 E63 AMG. This car is the longest we have owned a single individual car. It's getting on for almost 7 years old now, and it's still parked outside. And to be frankly honest with you, I can't see myself selling it for the next 6 or 7 years. Why we got it? Well, I was reading a Top Gear magazine back when we had our Cayenne GTS, and they had just done a review on the new, at the time, E63. I showed my dad the magazine. I'm like, Dad, why don't you call Mercedes and ask them how much one of these would cost? And so we did, and we found out that it wasn't much more expensive than our Cayenne GTS. So everything just fell into place. We spec'd it out and we purchased it. And 4 months after speccing it, we took delivery in the middle of 2014. And that car to this day, and I think forever and always will be my favorite sports car that we have ever owned. We bought it with 557 horsepower, added a Brabus piggyback right after buying it, which boosted the power to 585 horsepower from that, we went to a PP performance tune and a Catalyst FI exhaust system, which moved it to 720 horsepower. The car was running lean, so we went to Rentec, got a 660 horsepower tune and maintained the FI exhaust system. We had some complications, had to send the car to Dubai, where we decided to go with Brabus. Now what Brabus did was they upgraded the turbos and installed their own custom exhaust system along with the diffuser and some other goodies. And really that's the way the car sits now. 6 years of ownership, 60,000 kilometers, and I could go 600,000 kilometers more in that car. It's perfect. What more do you need? Sounds good, looks great, has a great interior even for its age, and it killed supercars. Well, obviously not your VF supercharged Audi R8s or your 911 turbos, but it keeps up, and that's impressive for a car of its size. After the Mercedes E63/Brabus 730, whatever you want to call it, we got my first car, which was a Mazda RX8. And so the story behind this is actually a pretty cool one. I had worked out a deal with my dad where if I got a 3.75 GPA, he would buy me a car. I didn't get a 3.75 GPA, but for some reason, I think I was whining and whinging a lot. So I ended up with a Mazda RX8. And my dad had told me, don't buy it, you're gonna hate it. And he was wrong, because I bought it and I loved that car for the 2 months that it was actually working. Because expectedly, can you guys take a guess as to what happened after 2 months? Yeah, I blew the rotor. I didn't blow an apex seal. I was maintaining the car perfectly fine, adding premix, checking the oil, but I actually ended up blowing up the rotor. I remember when we opened the engine, the RX8 mechanic here claimed he had never seen anything like it. And really, after the engine blew up, I forgot all the good aspects about the RX8, and I was just mad at the fact that it blew up, because it's my first car and it was just really annoying. It was a great car, don't get me wrong. It had a brilliant transmission, a brilliant engine when it worked, a brilliant noise, and it was relatively practical. It had 4 seats. I could take my friends in it if I wished. But I mean, how can you like a car after it blows up once and you've only owned it for a month and you've done nothing to it? Yeah, if you tune a car, it blows up, fine. But a stock car, literally grenading its own engine, that was very disheartening to me. After the RX8, well, while we had owned the RX8 actually, my dad picked up a Porsche Boxster GTS, the 2015 Porsche Boxster GTS that I then sold and bought back. This car also has a very interesting story because I was incredibly against my father purchasing this car. I told him that, Dad, Porsches are for girls, it's white with a red interior, what are you doing, you're gonna hate the car. Me being a kid, I was a juvenile, I was an idiot. And I have never been more glad that my father went against what I was saying and picked up that car anyways. Because the Boxster GTS, and there's a reason we bought it back, because it really is one of the best driving cars that I have ever experienced. It doesn't have too much horsepower, so you can really push it as much as you want. And at the end of the day, it's a Porsche, it's reliable, it sounds really cool, it's naturally aspirated, it has the PDK. So really that car has everything going for it. Plus, it's a great companion alongside the Brabus, which is more of a muscle powerhouse. This is like a delicate ballerina, if that makes any sense. While we had owned the Boxster GTS in Karachi, we decided to pick up a car in Dubai. Obviously, we're a family of 4, so we needed 4 seats, but we didn't want to go with your regular Cayennes or your Range Rovers or even your G-Wagon. We wanted something different. And what's that one car almost every car guy dreams of owning when they grow up? A Ferrari. And there was actually surprisingly a Ferrari that fit the bill perfectly, the Ferrari FF. This was back in 2016 when we had bought the FF. We bought it about 4 years used. It was a 2012 model year, finished in Rosso Corsa over a black with red stitched leather interior. Amazing specification and an even more amazing car. If I had to single out the single best engine I have ever experienced, it would be between the FF and the car that I'm going to talk about next. But the noise of the V12, the transmission, And the fact that it actually had 4 seats that you could fit a family of 4 in. My dad is 6'1", I'm about 6'3" now, I was 6'1" back then. But I fit in that car in the back seats sitting behind my mother albeit, but I still fit comfortably. You could go long distances in the back seat of that car without complaining too much. It was an amazing, awesome experience. And the FF was more special because it was the first time we had a car outside of Pakistan. So it wasn't just Phase 8 in Kurnmali, you know, we got to experience new roads. I took it to Jabal Jais, which people claim to be the best driving road in the world. I took it to Jabal Hafeet, which was not great, but it was still a good driving road compared. Moving forward from the Ferrari FF, we picked up my second car in Karachi, Pakistan, which was the 2017 ND Mazda MX5. And this car blew my mind. I did not expect it to be as brilliant as it was. 100 and something horse, I think 162 horsepower, around about 1,000 kilograms in weight. That car was just, I still remember, in fact, all of my friends to this day ask me, Yaar, why did you sell the MX? Why did you sell the MX? And to be honest, sometimes I think the same, because it was relatively cheap to bring into Pakistan since it only has the 1.5 liter 4-cylinder engine. You don't have to pay the exorbitant amount of duties that I mentioned in my earlier video. So really that car was a culmination of things that came together to make an imperfectly perfect package. I fit in it, which was incredible to me. And then on top of that, it would just make your daily commute fun. You put the top down, you drive to school with your manual gearbox, shifting, sliding. That car was special. That car was really, really, really special. Yes, it was the Shelby GT350. So the first takeaway is the sound, the roar of that 5.2 liter naturally aspirated flat plane crank V8. Second, the handling balance. I took it on racetracks, I did autocross with it. There's nothing I didn't do with the Shelby GT350. And it was an exceptional experience owning that car. It was reliable, and this was my first car in university. I was all alone. I had no one to help me maintain the car, whatever. I was new to the country. But even still, the Shelby GT350 was just the perfect car. Other than oil changes, in 45,000 kilometers, I owned that car for 2 years. 45,000 kilometers and about 4 track days, I did not have to change the brake pads even once. And it's not like I drove it easy on the streets. I mean, these videos that I'm playing right now are going to prove to you that I drove the snot out of that car. It lived up to it, man. Everything about that car was perfect. And then on top of that, the GT350 to me was more like a friend than anything else. It was because of the GT350 that I met a lot of the people who I still am in touch with in Toronto. A lot of the people who I consider very, very good friends of mine. And to some people, it might sound materialistic that, oh, cars, you guys met through cars, you're all about money, blah, blah, blah. That isn't the case, because cars is the one passion that all of us have that brings us together. It's something that we can talk about no matter what happens, no matter where you go in the world. Cars will always, for some reason, in a car guy's life, remain relevant. While I was away in Toronto, my father picked up the 2017 Audi R8 V10. But not just any Audi R8 V10. It was VF supercharged, making 800 horsepower. And we recently just sold that car, unfortunately. It was time to let it go. It's time for bigger things to come in. But that car was also incredibly special. Arguably the most special car we've ever had in our garage, and the only car that you could really consider exotic. It was a proper supercar. It had 2 seats, mid-engine layout with all-wheel drive, a brilliant double-clutch transmission, and obviously 800 horsepower, which made it faster than pretty much anything on the roads. And really, it was a brilliant, brilliant experience owning that car. Why we bought it? Well, we got a really good deal. It came up on the market. My dad saw it. He called me. He asked me what I thought of it. I said, you know, it's good, but maybe it'll have some problems. Maybe it won't. But you know what? Let's just go for it. And so the next day he called me back saying, it's done. I'm like, chalein, ab waqt hi batayega kaisi hogi. So he got the car, and everything that I thought would be wrong with it was not. It was not unreliable. It was not difficult to drive, difficult to maintain, difficult to own. In fact, like I said in my Living with a Supercar video, other than your usual maintenance stuff, there really wasn't much else that the Audi R8 required. The Audi R8 was the first proper supercar that we ever owned, and it was a brilliant experience. Of the cars I've discussed that we have owned, I would like to know what your guys' favorite is. Is it the R8, which I feel like most people are going to say? Maybe the ones who understand how special the Shelby is would agree with the Shelby. But for me personally, I would have to go with the Brabus 730. I think it's the fact that we've owned it for 6 years, and not just that, but we've modified it so extensively. We've worked on it. We really perfected that car. It's exactly where it should have been from the factory when it came. And really, when you own a car, there's nothing much more fun than modifying it, making it exactly how you want it. And the fact that it was the only car we've spec'd, that and the Cayenne are the only two cars that we ever spec'd out of a factory. All the other cars we've purchased have been used. So I think that mixed with the whole tuning thing makes it just a lot more special to me than anything else I've ever owned. And I know a lot of you are wondering what my next supercar is. Well, I can't say much. I might have decided on what it is. In fact, I'm going to tell you. So what I'm buying next is a